question here. Explaining the relationship between money supply, expected inflation, and GDP growth through the quantity theory of money. So right away, that makes me want to draw the money market graph. So we've got the quantity of money on the x-axis and expected inflation on the y-axis. The demand for money slopes down, and the supply of money is straight up. And the equilibrium where they cross shows the expected inflation rate. I might not be denoting that right. i.e., that's how they do it. So if you were to decrease the money supply curve would shift to the left, and as a result, expected inflation would increase. And if you were to increase it, there reaches a point where you're going to pass the point where demand for money is equal to zero. And what that's called is the liquidity trap. That's where a lot of policies lose their effectiveness. I will leave you to look into that a little further if it interests you. But our Janine The Tutor has said that the quantity theory of money is based directly on the changes brought about by an increase in the money supply. The quantity theory of money states that the value of money is based on the amount of money in the economy. Thus, according to the quantity theory of money, when the Fed increases the money supply, value of money falls and the price level increases. The quantity theory of money refers to the proposition that changes in the quantity of money lead to, other factors remaining constant, approximately equal changes in the price level. Usually, the QTM is written as MV equals PY, where M is the supply of money, V is the velocity of the circulation of money, that is the average number of transactions that a unit of money performs within a specific interval of time, P is the price level, and Y is the final output. Quantity theory is derived from an accounting identity, according to which the total expenditures in the economy, MV, are identical to total receipts from the sale of final goods and services, PY. This identity is transformed into a behavioral relation. One's V and Y are assumed as given or known variables. Assumptions. Ooh, this is sick. Assumptions. QTM adds assumptions to the logic of the equation of exchange. In its most basic form, the theory assumes that V, the velocity of circulation, and T, the volume of transactions, are constant in the short term. These assumptions, however, have been criticized, particularly the assumption that V is constant. The arguments point out that the velocity of circulation depends on consumer and business spending impulses, which cannot be constant. So just to interject there, obviously, consumer and business spending impulses change with economic booms and busts. So, for example, right now, we're on the verge of recession. There was a lot of employment when COVID happened. As a result, consumers reeled back their spending a whole lot and began saving more. So obviously, it's not constant. It also assumes that the quantity of money, which is determined by outside forces, is the main influence of economic activity in a society. A change in money supply results in changes in price levels and or a change in the supply of goods and services. It is primarily these changes in money stock that cause a change in spending. And the velocity of circulation depends not on the amount of money available or on the current price level, but on changes in price levels. Finally, the number of transactions, T, is determined by labor, capital, natural resources, knowledge, and organization. Theory assumes an economy in equilibrium and at full employment. Mainly, the theory's assumptions imply that the value of money is determined by the amount of money available in an economy. An increase in money supply results in a decrease in the value of money because an increase in the money supply causes a rise in inflation. As inflation rises, the purchasing power or the value of money decreases. Therefore, it will cost more to buy the same quantity of goods or services. We're almost there, folks. I'm going to skip over this, but the relationship between money supply with inflation and GDP, the quantity theory of money. Quantity theory of money emphasizes that the money supply is the main determinant of nominal GDP. It's explained by referring to the equation of exchange. The equation of exchange shows the relationship between the money supply, the income velocity of money, GDP deflator, and real GDP. The income velocity of money is the number of times the money supply is used to purchase final goods and services during a year. And the equation of exchange states that the money supply times the income velocity of money is equal to the GDP deflator times real GDP. The quantity theory of money assumes that the velocity of money is constant. I don't know how much everybody is getting out of me just reading this off, but at this point, I'm a good chunk of the way through, and they are providing excellent answers to the question. So I will continue on. If velocity is constant, its growth rate is 0, and the growth rate in the money supply will equal the inflation rate plus the growth rate in GDP. This also means that the inflation rate is equal to the growth rate of the money supply minus the growth rate of output. If the money supply grows at the same rate as output, the price level will be stable. If the money supply grows faster than output, the economy will experience inflation. Inflation is said to be a monetary phenomenon because excessive growth rates in the money supply cause inflation. If the output does not grow at a constant rate, the relationship between inflation and the money supply is not as strong. If the growth rate of output is not constant, inflation will vary even if the growth rate in the money supply is constant. Here I'm probably just going to interject and say how Canada aims to keep its inflation right around 2% every year. They want constant and stable inflation. Said consumers and businesses expect the same amount of inflation every year. When inflation gets out of control, the money supply begins rising too fast. You can experience something called hyperinflation. And when hyperinflation occurs, which I believe has happened in some countries in the southern hemisphere, basically your currency will lose all of its value. If the income velocity of money is not constant, the relationship between inflation and the money supply is not as strong. The growth rate and velocity is not constant, inflation will vary, even if the growth rate in the money supply is constant. Labor unions' monopolies in inflation. Some economists argue that inflation occurs as labor unions force wages up and firms pass the increased costs on the consumers in the form of higher prices. Many economists feel that labor unions do not make a major contribution to inflation. Many unions lack significant bargaining power, and only about 15% of the non-agricultural labor force belong to unions. Workers who cannot find jobs in the union sector turn to non-unionized sectors of the economy where wages are forced down. Some economists argue that monopolies contribute to inflation by restricting output and charging higher prices for products that would occur under competition. Increases in prices would cease once the monopolists reach profit maximizing price. Hence, increases in prices would cease. In inflation, the continuing increase in the price level will not be a problem in monopolistic settings. And our junior tutor most certainly explained the relationship between money supply, expected inflation, and GDP growth here. So I'm going to say, excellent answer. That's correct. That was my last question. Thankfully so, because I definitely need to go drink a glass of water after reading all that. Yeah, my mouth is incredibly dry. That was a mouthful. Yeah, that's all for today. This has been Kevin from OneClass. Thank you for watching. If you have your own questions you would like to ask, I believe there's a link below this video in which you can ask them. Either myself or our other senior tutor, Ose, will hopefully be able to answer them sometime this week. If you like this video, you can share it with your friends. And thank you.